The Tuna Canyon Detention Station was a detention station about 17 miles north of downtown Los Angeles in a place called Tujunga, where they held enemy aliens during the beginning of World War II. These were Japanese, German, and Italian enemy aliens. So for the Japanese, they were like Shinto and Buddhist priests, fishermen from Terminal Island, principals of Japanese language school, community leaders, business leaders, and so forth. Now the purpose of the Tuna Canyon was to process the detainees to see if they should be sent to the permanent detention camps in Texas and Montana and so forth. So they would decide at a hearing to determine whether they should be sent to a permanent detention station, sent to one of the WRA camps, or released. The camp was in a wooded area. It was built in the 1930s as a Civilian Conservation Corps camp, a CCC camp. So then they had about 7 barracks, and then the capacity of the camp was about 300 men. So then the people, I believe, they lived in dormitory-style barracks. So there'll be one long barrack, and all the beds will be lined up against the 2 walls.
Who did you know that was at the Tuna Canyon Detention Station?
My father and his very good friend. And my uncle also was picked up. We had a chicken farm.
So did they have any involvement with the Japanese American community in specifics?
I believe there was a Japanese association in Riverside, just as there were in many different towns. There were a Japanese association, and they were members. We didn't get to see him for long. We had to stand outside the fence. There was this really high fence. And he came to the fence on the other side, and we were outside. And it wasn't really close enough, to touch him. We just had to talk, and we couldn't talk very long.
Where was your grandfather living before the war?
Oh, he was living in Terminal Island, California. He was a fisherman.
Do you know when he was arrested?
A warrant was issued January, I think, 28th, and the FBI came to pick him up February 2nd.
Did he have any position in the Japanese American community?
No, that's the funny thing. He was just a fisherman, but he owned a small fishing boat. And I think if you owned a small fishing boat, you were suspect of contacting the Japanese submarines that were in the area.
How long was he at Tuna Canyon for?
I think about 3 months.
My father-in-law had invented this car, developed this car, and he was going to take it to Japan to manufacture it in Japan, and it was going to be called the Fujioka car. And then when they got there, the car was destroyed in the 1921 or 22 earthquake in Japan. He and an engineer, he stayed on to help the government for about 2 years. And because he stayed on, of course, the emperor and prince, I think at that time was prince or something, they gave him all kind of things, and of course he got all this publicity because he was helping them. So when Pearl Harbor came along, they picked him up right away because he had that connection. He had just come home. I think they said it was about in the evening, 5 or 6 o'clock. Yeah.
Did he have an idea that he would get arrested, or he had no idea?
No idea, absolutely no idea.
So how long was Mr. Fujioka in the Tuna Canyon?
You know, I think they were removed right after April.
So do you remember what the camp looked like?
We weren't allowed to really go see much of it. There was guards around to keep us from getting too close or whatever. There were guards all over the place. When my son was 18 or so, well, he was in high school, and my mother-in-law, we lived a few doors away, my mother-in-law called me and says, "Send the boys over. Papa has a knife." and he's in the corner. And he had developed Alzheimer's, and all this, I think, was coming back. And he was saying, don't talk to anyone, don't talk to him, don't say anything, because they'll beat you, they'll beat you up. Now, so we figured, because we'd ask him all kind of questions, and he would just laugh and just wouldn't say anything about what happened to him. So they say they weren't mistreated, but I think they were. They were really, because it was a time of war, So I really think we came to the conclusion, even though he never talked about it, that he was, because of that incident.
Ms. Okimoto, why do you think it's important for the younger generations to remember about Tuna Canyon?
Because we don't want something like this to ever happen again. They violated his civil rights like he had none.
The Japanese have a saying, shikata ganai, you forgive, but you remember.
It's important so that it won't happen again. That it is history. It's your history. It's our history. It's a history of the country.